what's one word that you would like to use in the workplace or as a leader instead of the word belonging?
Welcome.
Welcome. What is the driving value for you as a leader in your career?
One word? Support. Service.
Service. What does service boil down to?
Putting people first.
We'll take that as one word.
All right.
If there was one word written on your tombstone to describe you, what word would you choose?
Fair.
Fair.
Yep.
Fair.
Fair.
So JeVon, I shared some of your professional accolades. I want to give you permission to go back to the beginning, anywhere that you want, to tell us about your life as a young man.
Ooh, the beginning. All right. Well, we'll try to do this quick because I know that's not, we're not here for just fast. So quickly, I came into the world. My dad was black. My mom was white. My dad was a black pimp. He put women on a street corner. They sold their bodies. My dad took every dollar. Along the way, he also managed to father 23 children. I'm one of 23. The most he had by a woman was 3, so that lets you know how much he got around. My mother was one of his prostitutes, and she was an orphan. She was raised in a 1950s institutional orphanage. No clue how she got there. I have her last name. No clue why, where, how we got this last name. When she went into labor, she walked herself to the hospital because there was no one. My dad wasn't there. When she gave birth, she had no family, no belongings. So she said, okay, I'll give this child my last name. So I have this last name. And for anybody in the room that wants to be a smartass, no, I am not related to the McCormick Spice family. If I am, please let them know. From there, a pregnant prostitute's no good to a pimp. My dad, for the most part, cut us off. I would see him maybe 2-3 times a month, but I was raised on welfare. I was raised on U.S. poverty because poverty outside this country is a whole different level. So I grew up U.S. poor, but poor nonetheless. I watched my mom be called nigger lover because she had a mixed race child. Many of you in here know being mixed race in the 70s, not a good look. Black people didn't like you because you were half white. White people didn't like you because you were half black. So you were always trying to fit in. You were always trying to belong. You were always trying to be accepted. And in many cases, you were trying to be tolerated. So I was in and out of juvenile prison 3 different times. I was sexually molested by one of my dad's prostitutes at the ages 6, 7, 8 years old. She used to force me to perform oral sex on her. At the age of 9, my mom was facing prison time for welfare fraud, so I got sent to live with my dad in Houston, Texas, and that became 6 years of truly hell of being with my dad supposed to be for 6 years. I got abandoned with 3 of my half brothers and sisters at the age of 12, reunited with my mother at age 15. She took me to be tested. I was testing on a 5th and 6th grade level. Needless to say, graduation rolled around. This kid's not too bright. I have nothing but a GED. I never went to college. I taught myself how to invest in the stock market. I was the president of a software company that we scaled that sold off to Accenture, and today you dropped all the other stuff. There you go.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
That was 51 years,
That was well done.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that story still takes my breath away hearing it. It's really something. I know we're going to talk about lessons from how did you get from there to here, but I do want to give you just one chance, because my guess is that many in this room, whether you're hearing that for the first time or you're familiar with JeVon's story, it's very sobering and presencing. And yesterday there was a segment about how the struggle is real. I'd love to know, I've heard you share the story about the toughest 3 weeks of your life, because you share all that.
Yeah.
And there's got to be some tough times, some tough moments. If you're willing, share with this room the toughest 3 weeks of that whole journey.
So the toughest 3 weeks, I mentioned it. I was 12 years old. We had recently moved back to Dayton, Ohio from Houston, Texas. And it was me, my father, his prostitute, and 3 of my half-brothers and sisters. And my dad had been gone for like a week, and he just showed up one day and said, hey, I'm going to England for 2 weeks. I'll be back. And that was a Saturday. And he just left. And he left me with the prostitute and my 3 half-brothers and sisters. On Sunday, the prostitute says she's going to get a pack of cigarettes. And she left Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon turned into Monday afternoon, which turned into Tuesday and Wednesday. And Wednesday afternoon, I realized, okay, we don't have any more food. So I had to have my 4-year-old sister watch the 3-year-old and the 2-year-old so I could go down to the store and steal food. I literally had to have my 4-year-old sister babysit. So I go down to the store, I steal food, I come back, I walk in the door, my 2-year-old little brother, he's walking around butt naked, and it hits me, oh man, we don't have any diapers. Well, I can't steal diapers, it's too big. So I set him on the toilet, he's crying, I'm crying, I look at him, I say, hey, my man, until something comes out, this is how it's going down. And that's how you learn to potty train. Wednesday turned into Saturday, Saturday turned into 3 weeks. And we were left for 3 weeks. It was February, Dayton, Ohio. To this day, I have never felt a greater stress because I did not know if they would disconnect the electricity or if they would turn off the water. And I knew what it was like to not have both of those things. But in this case, now I had a wild card. No one knew we were there. No one was coming for us. I was supposed to be in school. But I was not going to leave my brothers and sisters. So that was the hardest 3 weeks I've ever, there's been no bigger challenge. Trying to figure out how to make payroll, how to scale, how to, take on PE. Yeah, all things that are tough. But when you talk about the struggle is real, that was a real struggle.
Wow, that creates perspective. Wow. I've never asked you this. Having 20 plus brothers and sisters, do you have an idea of where many of them are today? And I'm genuinely curious, even that 2-year-old, do you still have any connection to him today?
So when I left Dayton, Ohio at age 15, I knew there were 18 of us. I had met them all but 2. One of the moms was smart and got the hell out of Dayton, and we didn't know where she went. And my dad died, I think 5 years ago now, and I went back to his funeral, and I met 5 brothers and sisters I didn't even know I had. So that's when I learned there were 23 of us.
Wow.
The only ones that I've stayed in contact with is my sister, the 4-year-old you heard me talk about, and my 2-year-old brother that I potty trained. My sister, the middle one, the 3-year-old, this is kind of sad. The only time she knew her mother sober, and these are the 3 that I got left in the house with, that she was a heroin addict, the prostitute that left us for 3 weeks. The only time she knew her mother sober, they were both in prison together. That was it.
Wow.
It's the only time they knew their mother sober. So the 2-year-old, to your point, man, and I'm going to do my best here. You guys didn't give me any tissues not to cry. We rented a beach house down in Florida last year, and I found out my little brother, because we text still, was going to be at Disney World. And I invited him to the beach house, and he came up, and we sat, and I have this awesome picture of him, his wife. He got married when he was 19, still married, 2 kids. God knows that woman saved his life. But there's this picture of he and his family, me and my family, and it was just something we had never had, man. And that wow. Really, I covet that picture.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's
Bastard.
Beautiful.
You got me, John.
It's almost unfair to ask, but how did you get from there to here today? And a lot of lessons. What stands out? Stories, examples that were pivotal to getting from that JeVon to who you are right now.
Life, what I figured out as a kid is, one, confidence is free. Many people say it's built. I don't believe it is. It's a choice. You wake up in the morning, you're going to be confident, you're going to be positive, or you're going to be negative, timid, and meek. And for me, there were days I may not have had food, I may not have had electricity, but I had confidence, and it was free. It was a choice. And so confidence was a big one. Positivity was a big one. And really just looking at the lessons that I was going through in life, it really, I'll call it what it offends me when people say, oh my God, you had every reason not to succeed. No, I had every reason to succeed, because if you can make it through that shit, the rest of it is pretty easy. And so I just look at entrepreneurship. I learned that from my dad. I look at the things that I went through in life, and what I realized is I can't change who I was born to, period. My dad was a pimp. My mom was a prostitute. They weren't married. Okay, great. We've established that. We've recognized it. We'll own it. But if I lay in bed for 2 weeks with the sheets over my head and I'm depressed or upset, it doesn't change anything. So what I realized is, okay, the power is in choice. I have the choice each morning to see the day for what I want it to be, and not to look back at my past on what it was, because I can't change that, but I can change the next hour, day, week, month, and year.
You in your book, The Modern Leader, one of the things you talk about is, and you shared this earlier, there's a playbook that you believe needs to be thrown out. The playbooks have been talked about today several times. Anything you want to share about your journey to get to where you are today, and what you learned about the old playbook and why you say it needs to be thrown out?
So again, I have a GED. So working my way through the business world was very interesting in learning the different avenues of, if you don't have certain credentials, you don't get in. And so the big one that started early for me was, I was working at the insurance company, and so two things. I'm working at this insurance company. I'm the mail boy. I push a cart. I'm a file clerk. And I go past a room one day, and it's a conference room, and it has a sign on it, and it says, free lunch and learn 401k. And so, of course, all I saw was free lunch and learn. I'm like, shit, yeah, I'm going to that. And so no clue what, 401k was. So I'm pushing my cart. It could have said free lunch and learn foot fungus. I'm like, hey, I'm in. And so I'm pushing my cart, and this lady walks by me, and I go, excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me where conference room 401k is? And she did. That's exactly. She laughed. And she goes, no, that's what the lunch and learn is over. I'm like, hey, I'm in. So I go in, and I hear two of the greatest words in the history of humanity. You all can keep the wheel, keep fire, keep electricity. Give me compound interest. Yeah, I was like, I'm like, you can turn $100 into $200 and no one comes looking for you? Like this is... So I fell in love, taught myself how to trade stocks, and every dime I would get, I would put into the stock market. But really, I was the mail clerk, and I wanted more. So I started applying to other places. And this is back in the day where you actually had to do work to get work. Like, you had to take your resume to places. You didn't just upload some shit and hope for the best. You actually, you made cold calls, knocked on doors, followed up. And so I could not get a call back. I could not get on anyone's calendar. And one day, this nice gentleman, white guy, picks up the phone. And he says to me, hey, how'd you get a black first name, JeVon, and an Irish last name, McCormick? First of all, if you all recall, I don't know where my last name comes from, so I'm celebrating in my head. Holy shit, I'm Irish! Like this is some next level action here. And so I hang up the phone, and it hits me. I'm like, oh, they're seeing JeVon. So my full name is JeVon Thomas McCormick. That day, I said I'm going by JT McCormick. The next week, callbacks, invites, just flooded. And I'm like, wow. And it was bittersweet, bitter because I had to edit myself. I can't tell you how many times I walked in and they were like, JT McCormick? Yes. Oh, you're not who we were expecting. Who were you expecting? And so it was sweet because, hey, I got in. I cracked the code. Bitter, I had to edit myself. And so when I say the broken playbook, that actually still goes on. There are companies that you could have gone to Harvard for your undergrad, Harvard for your master's, and let's say you got crazy and got your MD from Harvard. But at the top of your resume, if it says Rayvonte Jenkins, they may never make it down to your credentials and where you went to school. When we say the struggle is real, that shit's real. So the broken playbook for me is you have this playbook that was built very exclusionary for people who fit the parameters of this playbook. And we live in a time now where that playbook is broken. It's flawed. It doesn't work anymore. If you just look from a leadership perspective right now, take Warren Buffett, who just turned 92, all the way down to the 22-year-old startup founder. No leader, no CEO walking the earth has ever experienced everything we're going through right now all at once. Sure, Warren Buffett dealt with racial tension back in the 50s and 60s. Hell, he has seen 17% interest rates. He's seen inflation. He's seen Roe versus Wade come and go. But no one has dealt with it all at once. And so right now you're in a real, what I call, this is a real leadership moment. This is some Lewis and Clark type shit going on where people, there's no playbook for this. And I offended, our company, we publish authors' books, and I did a post and I pissed off some of our authors. I said, there's 20,000 books published with the word playbook in them for leadership. And I said, can you truly be a leader if you are following a playbook? And it pissed off a lot of people, but I stand by the comment.
There's an essence in your book, and an essence to you, I believe, as I've gotten to know you, of insatiable curiosity. And you say there's not a playbook. You all have been awarded for your culture, and we can talk about this. What has led to that? One of the things you write in your book is about one of the most powerful ways of putting people first is asking questions.
So much of my career was built from asking questions. Can you tell me where conference room 401k is? I've never been afraid to ask. The worst thing you can say to me is no. Maybe you say F no, still no. But what if you said yes? So Mrs. Dudek, I'll give her credit, third grade teacher. I was bussed out to the suburbs, and she said there are no dumb or stupid questions. I've been asking questions ever since. And so I truly do believe, even more now than ever as a society, we need to do more listening, learning, and seeking to understand versus I've got my opinion, and if you don't agree, you're wrong. That's such a very narrow-minded, short way of thinking. So one of my favorite questions when people have been with our company for 6 months, I sit with them and I said, hey, because we all have done this. Everyone's had a career or work where they said, man, if I was the CEO of this place, I'd do this. All of us have done. If you've worked somewhere, you've said that. So when I sit with people and they're 6 months, they've been there, we call them 180s, I go, hey, you're CEO tomorrow. What's the first thing you do, implement, edit, do away with, scrap? And they look at me and I go, yeah, you're in the chair tomorrow. What are you going to do? And I do that because I know people have all said, this is what if somebody gives me some fascinating idea or something we can run with? So I want to listen, learn, and seek to understand.
Talk about when, in your interview process at Scribe, They interview you they're with you at the end of the process. What's an example of a question you might give to them when they sit down with you?
I give them a little bit about my background, and then I ask them, what's the greatest challenge you've ever overcome? And the reason why I give them a little bit of my background first, because it then puts you in a position, don't you dare try to sit there and tell me, oh, well, my master's thesis was really tough. No, you're going to have to actually come with, what challenge have you overcome? Because at that point, if you're sitting with me at the end of our interview process, all the people who've interviewed you before, they know your skill set. They know if you're good for the position, the role. I'm looking for character. I'm looking for curiosity. I'm looking for, who is this person? And I can't tell you the amount of people who have gone in and said, well, did you look at my resume? And I tell them, no. Couldn't tell you where you went to school. All I know is your name. That does not matter to me. I'm in here to learn about you. And when I sit down, what they're blown away with is when I sit in the seat, I look at them, what questions do you have for me? I've had people that say, oh, well, I don't have any. All right. Thank you for coming in. Take care. And walk off. Because if you don't have any curiosity, and this isn't about me. I don't care if it was any of you. If you get to sit with the CEO of a company and you don't have any questions, I find that just interesting that you don't have one question. So
you said something a few minutes ago about editing your name. And one of the things you've written about and teach, and I believe you live this at Scribe, is instead of asking people to edit themselves, it's time that we edit our cultures. And for you, I'd love to know what that means. And if you can also speak to, for you, even editing the words that are used. You're so big on language. Curious to hear about this.
I am. I'm. Words. We all heard this growing up. Sticks and stones may break my bones. The words, that bullshit. When you're called half breed, chocolate, Oreo cookie, vanilla swirl, the words hurt. Words hurt, and they're meaningful. They're powerful. So I got a GED. My vocabulary is kind of limited, but I'm very intentional with the words I use. So from a conscious leadership perspective, think about this. Human capital. I'm a God guy, and God and I are working on my foul language, so just work with me. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. You're never going to hear me cheating on my wife, but I use foul language. Sorry. Human capital. Are we fucking trafficking people? Why is this term even in the business world? That should just be erased. People are our greatest assets. No, they're not. My investment account is my greatest asset. If you are viewing people as your greatest assets, that is a deep plantation slavery mindset that you need to look at yourself in the mirror. And I've had people say, well, no, I'm not plantation. Then why are you using the language? Oh, because everybody else is? Because some broke-ass playbook told you that's what you were supposed to say? Question what you're doing as a leader. So human capital, people are our greatest assets. And this one has been said in here a few times, so if somebody wants to throw your book at me, I'm fine. I'll hide behind Jon. You hear this term, recruit and retain. We want to recruit and retain the greatest people. Look up the definition of retain. To keep possession of. I don't want to recruit and retain anyone. I want to attract and provide. Attract great people, provide a phenomenal culture, phenomenal work, phenomenal pay. We want to attract and provide. And we can all look at me and say, oh, well, those are just words. Again, words have meaning. If you're not paying attention, society has shifted, and people want to be valued. And if you see people as your greatest asset, if you see people as human capital, you yourself as a leader have an issue.
One of the words you appreciate is the idea of creating a culture of welcoming. What does that mean, and how do you all do it?
So you all heard me say this earlier. When I was a kid, there are certain words that I've just pushed away, and I don't find them to be inviting. And she's going to be mad at me when I say this. I don't want to be accepted. I'm not applying to college, not applying to your country club, so I don't want to be accepted. I damn sure don't want to be tolerated. Like, who wants to be tolerated? Like, people actually say that. Oh, we have a culture of tolerance. That's a shitty culture. So, you know, I this one's come on lately, belonging. And I battle with it because I get it, but just from my perspective, I'm not saying it's bad, but from my perspective, at times I didn't want to be half white. At times I didn't want to be half black. At times I didn't want to be mixed race. I just wanted to belong. So the word became very toxic to me because belonging implies someone doesn't. So for us, it's a culture of welcome. Will you perform in your role? Will you drive results? Will you uphold the company values? Great, welcome. Does not matter who you voted for. Does not matter what pronouns you use. Doesn't matter how you identify. Doesn't matter if you believe in God or if you don't believe in God. Will you drive results, perform in your role, uphold the company values? Excellent. Welcome. And not only that, this is key because you got a lot of companies out there right now celebrating themselves. Oh, we hired a chief diversity officer, 13 minorities, and we started using pronouns in our email addresses. And they think they won. Diversity and people don't have a finish line. The game is not over. You didn't win. But more importantly, great, you hired 13 minorities. How are you continuing to make sure they are welcome once they're in? So it's not only welcome in, but continuing to make sure people are welcome once they're in.
So by that same token of welcoming, when I invited you up here, I referred to you as JeVon, not JT. Tell us why you are definitively JeVon now.
You know, you heard me say I edited myself and I changed my name. And when the George Floyd murder happened, the virtue signaling that I saw go on was disgusting. Blackout Tuesday on social media. What the hell did that do to move any needle? And let's call it what it is. Most companies and people were only doing it because you didn't want to get called out. It wasn't because you were actually interested. And then we were arguing over a syrup bottle. A damn syrup bottle. And I'll say it out loud. I promise you, my belief, the person who made that decision was not black. Because I know a lot of black people who bought that syrup because she was on the bottle. And so that, I'm like, why are we arguing over a syrup bottle? But the one that really hit me the most, I saw a piece that said at the time there were only 3 Fortune 500 black CEOs in America. I was like, who? So I went and looked up their names. Kenneth Frazier, Marvin Ellison, Roger Ferguson, and as a bonus, the wealthiest black man in America is named Robert Smith. So of course, I was like, well, those are 4 ethnic free names, if you will. So it hit me. I was like, man, whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And that goes for everything in life. Whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. So I said, okay, I'm part of the problem. I continue to work as JT McCormick. You are part of the problem. So I made the decision that I was going to reclaim my name and go by JeVon. And I didn't do it for me. I made my career and had success as JT. I did it for every kid in America named Rayvante, Martavius, Laquanda, Rosalia, Juan, Jesus, because my goal, one day when you're in the business world, maybe you can work next to a JeVon and not just a JT.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I want to finish by bringing it home in a literal sense. Yesterday, I believe it was Chip, and forgive me if I'm misstating or misquoting, there was a quote that came from the stage, and it was something along the lines of the measure of a man or the measure of a leader is how well he takes care of his family. Was that yesterday? Was that said yesterday? Chip said that, yeah. JeVon, at home, what's a lesson you've learned leading at home?
I'll tell you something I'm most proud of is that I did not repeat the cycle of my father. You know, I have 4 children, 1 wife, and that I always try to improve. I know I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. You raise your voice. You do something as a parent that you're not proud of, but it's truly my greatest accomplishment is my family, and I didn't have one, and so now I do. So much. When I was a kid, 6, 7 years old, the mail person delivered at Christmas time a family photo Christmas card. You know, with the Christmas card with the family on it. I didn't know this family, didn't know who they were, but I asked my mom if we could keep the card. And every Christmas I would put this card out, because it was a family, had the fireplace, they all had on the same sweaters. I was like, man, this is cool. Man, every year I got a Christmas card that goes out with the McCormicks on it. Shit looks like it's from Restoration Hardware. And it came from that card that came to my house. I was like, I'm going to have one of those one day.
That's awesome. That's awesome, JeVon. Speaking of home, I'd love your permission to read a passage from this book. It's in the last chapter. You probably have a sense of what I'd like to read. Is that okay?
Go for it, man.
Yeah. I think you've spoken and written about how one of the most important people in your life was your mother. And I believe that as you were completing this book, your mother passed away.
Yeah.
And there's a passage in here where there's both a note that she left behind, and I'd like to read this note and then invite you to respond to close us out here. And then in addition to that, she had written her own obituary. So the note reads this. There was an envelope she'd left for you. It was simple and short. It said, "Son, now that my time has passed, when I look back on my life, I know my only accomplishment in life was that I had you. This is in honor of you, son, and all that you may have accomplished in book publishing." I was worried about you. I don't know how I'm going to read this next part. There's another sheet of paper on it. She'd written her obituary, and here's what she wrote. "I, Anna Marie McCormick, Stark, turned the last page in my book of my life on March 23rd, 2022. Some chapters are glorious. Some hold deep sorrows and disappointments. Many times, I do not want to finish my book at all. However, as I write the last chapter, it is filled with the deepest gratitude, unparalleled love, joy, and peace. My son, JeVon Thomas McCormick, my daughter-in-law, Megan Ann, and my 4 grandchildren, Ava Ann, Jackson Thomas, Elle Marie, and Jace Thomas, as well as my husband, E.J. Stark, will know my love for them is unceasing. Everyone has a story, so as it should be. I leave with nothing unsaid, no chapters unread. Please do not judge my story by the chapter you walked in on. Today I closed my book." Anything you'd like to say about your mama?
My mom passed away March 22nd. We had a conversation at the end of February. And it was a blessed conversation that many people don't get to have. And my mom, her biggest regret in life was the 6 years that I was off with my dad. She always regretted that. I'm sorry, that you shouldn't have been there. And a lot that was unspoken was we both knew there were times my mom could have got me back, but she chose not to. So I understand why it was one of her biggest regrets. And I expressed to her, I said, Mom, you need to lay that down. You need to let that shit go. I said, because here's the thing. Arguably, those 6 years were some of the greatest 6 years of my life. They taught me things that most people in this world are never going to know about this society. And that was a gift. That was a blessing. So I told her, I said, you need to let that go. I said, you did your job. You gave me life. You taught me how to survive. It was up to me to learn how to thrive. And by less than a month later, she passed away. Yeah, it was rough. I mean, the hardest part was I still have this last name that I don't know where it comes from. The person that gave it to me, why she gave it to me, how it came to be. Man, that was a deep struggle when she passed away, because my wife has my last name, my kids have my last name, but where I got it from is gone. And I mean, I'll call it what it is. I bought my wife a new car. On the license plate, it says MCORMIK. The name is meaningful for me, deeply meaningful, and oddly enough, I don't know where it comes from.
JeVon, thank you for sharing your story today. JeVon McCormick, let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you all. Stay up here.